You guys ready for this? One of the coolest episodes we've recorded thus far. Recognize these? Huh? CEO of Reebok Todd stops by the studio. Honestly, gives me some of the best life advice I've ever received. Some of the greatest business insight into how he stayed so fresh his entire career. This dude, a legend, a mogul, is an understatement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the No Limits Podcast. Dude, well, I can't thank you enough for coming on, man.
Yeah, all good.
When we met at Strega, I was so fired up to meet you.
Yeah.
And then to hear your story on top of that, I was like, wow, this talk about like actual, you know, in my world, in the social media world, similar to what you were saying earlier, it's like you peel back the layers on people and then you find out maybe everything they put out there on social was a little more pumped up than it is. Yeah. So to meet a guy who has been in the trenches and started on the ground floor and has the receipts of him working his way up to that CR is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a journey. You know, one of the things I try not to be on Instagram too much, but when I'm on it, like, everyone's got different advice for people.
Yes.
And I'm always like, you know, human beings aren't wired to everyone take the same advice and this is going to work for me.
Totally.
You know, you got to like really find people you connect with, you share the values with, and then listen to their story. But I also hear all these billionaires say, it's not about this, it's about this. It's like there is no one way, in my opinion. You know, you got all these influential people and they all argue over what the path is.
Totally.
And I'm like, everyone's wired different, comes from different backgrounds. Like, you know, you got to find out what works for you. So it's just interesting to me, like there's always this, like these guys are always arguing over what's the right way to do things or like, you know, what's the grind or is it passion first or do you find something you're just good at? Like all this semantics. And I just think you got to like, I like what this dude's about. I like where he came from. I like what he's doing today. So let me listen to his journey versus.
I like that. Yeah. I love that because at 29 for guys that are coming up, it's like we had Gary on, and then we had months and months later we had Grant Cardone on.
Oh, Grant,
and then I'll like my dad years ago got me into Dave Ramsey.
Yeah,
so it's like a 29-year-old, you know, who's you're accumulating some wealth, and you're like, where do I put? You know, you got Grant that's like, you need more debt. Debt is, and then you got Ramsey.
It was like his whole thing is get rid of it.
Right,
and he's got the path to get rid of your
exactly. I like hearing you say like, oh, you just take kind of.
That's the great example. Like either could work.
Right, and exactly, and then they have loyal followings on both ends. Whether it's Ramsey
and both
or
would
Grant.
swear by him.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like playing like a zone defense, trying to figure everyone out. You know. But no, it's to hear your story is amazing. And I was hoping we could capture that story on air. I know you probably told it 1,000 times, but for our audience, it's brand new. And my intuition is saying as we go more Jetsons into social media world, we're losing. You know, somewhat of our roots of, more humble. I think people come up now and they're like, okay, as soon as it's me taking off day one, I should have the Cybertruck, the big crib, and it's like we forget folks have humble beginnings because of social, bumps everything up. But take us back to the start. You know, who was little Todd? And then how'd you get connected with Reebok? Early days and bring us through.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I do really have a crazy journey to get to where I am, and it's funny because I do, I talk at school sometimes, and I talk to my kids' friends, and like they look at like I'm a dinosaur because my career has been a marathon. Like I've been doing this over 32 years. I've been at the same company 32 years, which is an anomaly today.
Right.
But I think it's all predicated off kind of my passion for the company, for the industry. But it was a very, I think, long, windy road.
Right.
But it started kind of like I went to school in New York and I came back to Boston where I grew up and not too far from here actually. And it was a really tough market at the time. And I wanted to get into the sports business. I started selling shoes when I was 16. So I started working at Foot Locker when I was 16. So I always kind of had the pulse and the heartbeat of like, the shoe wall.
Right.
And having my friends come in and holding the hottest next shoe. Like this was my thing, you know?
Were you trading shoes at the time too, or just collecting?
Yeah, we were trading shoes actually illegally at the time. Like, you know, because like back then, like, you know, we would get 12 pair. There was no social media. So I was the guy.
Right.
I had 12 pairs of pumps when they first came out, or Jordans. Yeah. I'm like, yo. So we were, my friends worked at other stores in the mall.
Yep.
And so we would like trade.
Oh, wow.
Not legally, illegally. And then one day the whole ring got jammed up. We all got let go, but that was, and then I started working at Athlete's Foot after that. But I mean, like, you know, I grew up like, you know, basketball, DJing, hip hop, and sneakers was my whole life.
Right.
And so now if you look at, I'm doing the same shit at 54.
Right.
You know, my wife says I'm still like a teenager, but I that's what I grew up on. And I'm very fortunate that like what I love and what I'm passionate about in life is what I get to do for a living. It's a little more pressured now and a lot more numbers involved, but it's still at the core, it's really consumer and culture and these things, which is really great. But when I came out of school, man, there was like very, very few jobs. And I was back in Boston, and I was applying everywhere. And then I got this call back from Reebok, and they were like, listen, like we don't really have any full-time job. We have this temp pool. And I was like, all right, cool. So I come up, and they make me take a typing test. Because the temp pool was to be an admin assistant. Like they were going to like, and so if somebody called in sick, they had this pool of people they can call and be like, yo, Mary's sick today. Todd, can you come in?
Yep.
I had no idea. So I can't type. So I literally get in there, and she goes, listen, when I leave the room, turn the paper over, hit enter, and start typing. I wasn't listening to anything she said, man, because I was like, it's a wrap, I'm done. So I didn't even hear her. So I just start typing when she leaves the room, and she comes in and she's like, Todd, you only typed like 6 words a minute. Did you turn the paper over and hit enter? And I'm like, oh no, I didn't hear that. She goes, well, go do that. So she leaves the room. I turn the paper over, hit enter, and I think I typed like 9 words a minute, with the right essay there. So she's like, listen, Todd, I'd love to put you in this temp pool, but like, you know, you got to be able to
not be your jam,
might not be your thing. And I gave this like Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise speech on the way out. I was like, listen, I've been selling shoes since I was 16. I know every sneaker in the industry. You guys need somebody like me. I just want to get in, blah. I gave this whole speech. And then I drove, and I'm looking at my rearview mirror back into Boston. This was back when the old campus in Canton, or Stoughton at the time, Stoughton, the first one. And I drove away in my rearview mirror. I'm looking, and I'm like, I ain't never going to see that place again. You know, so I'm still working at Athlete's Foot. I'm bartending. I'm hustling. And then they called me, and they said, hey, we don't have a job for you, typing or secretary, but we do have a job in the warehouse, packing T-shirts for the Super Bowl.
Yep.
I was like, all right, I'm down. So I come in.
Yeah.
I came in a 3-piece suit to work in the warehouse. Right. So
did the guys just roast you? When
listen,
you walked
man, I'm telling you, like I was in there packing T-shirts, and every employee just walked by to see who was this idiot with the 3-piece suit. Not even just a suit. I had the vest joint too. I had the whole thing.
Straight out of Step Brothers.
Yes, exactly.
Incredible.
Exactly. So I did that and packed T-shirts, and then they called me back again for another warehouse job, and then eventually I parlayed that into working in the mailroom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I worked in the mailroom at Reebok for almost 1.5 years.
Wow.
My parents weren't happy, college education, and they're like, you got a job in the mailroom? I'm like, no, I'm like in the pulse of this, I'm learning. And I figured how long I could like work in the mailroom and then, you know, work nights at Foot Locker, how long I could maintain that.
Okay,
I was living in some awful place in Alston with my friends, and I was like, okay, I can do this for this amount of time before I'm not going to be able to afford it. And I was learning a lot. It was kind of cool because I started working in the mailroom, and then I also was in charge, this is how old I am, I was in charge of taking the designs, the footwear designs, putting them in a fax machine, and they would go to the factory. And so now, in the day, I'm reading all these blueprints and these designs, and at night I'm selling sneakers, and I'm just like, I'm going to everybody I could ask questions to, every engineer, every designer. I'm like, yo, tell me about this, tell me about that. I'm learning. And I was just a sponge. And so even though I was delivering mail, I was in my element, you know, but I was running out of time. I had to get a gig. So I took I made a coupon on the computer with like my face in the middle and like $1 bill. I still have it. And I put it in everybody's mailbox.
Wow.
And the base of the dollar said, you know, hire Todd Krinsky, will work 30 days for free. So I figured like how much longer I got where I could just take no salary, sell shoes at night. And I didn't really get a job. Like, you know, kind of HR came to me and the head of the mailroom came to me and they're like, yo, Todd, you can't put shit in people's mailboxes.
Can't solicit on campus here. It's got to frown upon.
Yeah, it's kind of like we don't do that. It's a corporation. But I did get kind of awareness there,
Right,
and
totally.
we also like played basketball at lunch every day. So I was starting to network, and off of that, somebody did offer me a job. I didn't work for free, but I got my first job.
Wow.
And then I was working in development at Reebok, and that's my first gig. So
Right.
that's kind of the whole. So it was like a 2-year odyssey of hustling,
Totally.
meeting people, and like college education or not, I wasn't humbled. I was like, yo, this is what I got to do.
Right, totally.
And I was learning, and people were really like giving of their time to teach me. They knew how passionate I was.
Right.
And then as soon as I got the job, I honestly today don't know what, because he tells the story till, but I don't really know what possessed me to do this. But I was like 6 months in, and Paul Fireman, who was the chairman at the time, had this massive office, like 3 times the size of this studio.
Holy shit.
And I walked in there with some sneakers from a competitor, and I was like, ooh, Paul, this is what we're not doing right now. This is what the kid wants. This jacket, these sneakers.
Okay, yep.
And he goes, who are you? And I said, I just got a job as in the mailroom. And he goes, all right, tell me more, because I feel like great entrepreneurs, no matter how much money you make, they're always curious. It's one
Totally.
thing I've always learned. I'm sure you do too when you
Yep.
meet people, right? They're always asking about you and how
Right.
you started, no matter how developed they are in their business. And he always loved hearing from young people. I
Right.
learned. So part of me thought I was going to get kicked out of his office, but the other part was like, maybe he'll listen. And he asked me a lot of questions, and that's how I got to know him, and he became a mentor of mine. But I think it was this brash passion for the industry early on. Even when I was putting mail in people's boxes, I was like just eyeing what was going on.
Right.
And I had this kind of exuberance because I was finally out of the mall, finally out of the selling shoes,
Yeah.
to actually being behind the scenes, and so it motivated me a lot.
That's incredible. And I'm sure he loved that you had your ear to the ground on
Yeah.
what the consumers actually wanted to wear.
Yeah.
Which, do you find at your level now? I feel like I feel like you have such an ear for what's hot right now as well. But
Yeah.
do you find being in the C-suites that it's easy to get lost in day-to-day operations and lose what's hot in trending and fashion and
Yeah,
footwear?
100%. I think the fact that I grew up in retail and grew up on the kind of shoe wall environment, I never will lose that. All of the people that work for me, I tell them you got to get out. I make them get out. I make them go to Philly, go to New York, go to LA. Go to
yep.
pockets in Europe. It's like a prerequisite to work with me is that you're seeing what's going on, because I still do it today. I don't go out as much as I used to, but when I do go out, I'm talking to people. People think I'm crazy. I'm going to people like, yo, why did you choose that? Or
Are you constantly looking down at people's feet?
Yeah, it's obsessed.
Yeah.
Even when I'm like, on vacation or whatever, you're always like, it's just the way it is. But I love consumer behavior. I love when people, like, there's certain people that go to a shoe wall and they're like, yo, Jordan 5s, this is what I'm getting. This is why I came in here, and they're my other. But there's a lot of people that they don't know what they want, and there's an experience, man. There's a cultural experience between looking at this shoe, you pick it up, you look at kind of the toe down, you look at the silhouette, you put it down by your jeans.
Right.
How's this going to look? Where am I going to wear it? I think there's so much culture and soul in that that's so great for our industry, and I never want to lose that. So I do try to go out. I can't go out as much as I used to, but when I do go out, I maximize the time by asking people, about what they're buying and why. And for the younger people that work for me, when they present to me or when we talk, I'm like, yo, when was the last time you were out? When was the last time you were out? And if they say, well, it's been a while, I'm like,
And by being out, is that like go out into the market?
Yeah.
Or go travel to other, Reebok locations and work there for
no, I mean, I think
just literally like get out.
Yeah, man. I think there's value in both. Like, I think there's value in like working your own store.
Right.
For sure. And we try to do that. We have a program where we do that. But I think this is more about getting into the kind of, marketplace where all the brands are competing and where you don't know anybody and you're just, trying to learn about what people are buying and what the trends are and why. I think there's just so much importance in that. If you stay in the building all the time, you get stale and you're talking to the same people, and where's the energy coming from?
Right.
And consumers can tell you a lot. Consumers can tell you a lot about what's happening, why they want it, and I think there's a lot of power in that.
It's so funny. I was just right before you walked in, I was having a conversation with Hurley.
Yeah.
On how to grow his social media.
Yeah.
And we were talking about. I was like, "When's the last time you've been in the comment section and took a on TikTok you can take a comment and make a video with it?"
Yeah.
And we both were like, "Ah, yes."
Yeah.
Both of us need to do more of that.
It's easier today with social media because you get instant reaction, right? And you can see what people are feeling or what they're not. The hard part is you don't know who's giving you the feedback, so you can trust it or not, right? But I think there is so much value in that, and I think you can get stuck in the C-suite. You can get stuck thinking like, you can get caught in the seasons, the spreadsheets,
Totally.
The business partners you got to deal with, and like, you gotta get out.
Was your North Star being active CEO? Like when you came to the chairman, pitched a competitor's shoe for what's hot on the market, and in that moment you're like, I'm going to eventually oversee this whole operation, or is it just like so horse blinders on day to day in the trenches?
I think my aspirations kind of evolved as I went. I first got in, man. Come on. I'm selling shoes one day and now I'm making shoes.
Right.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Pay me whatever.
I'm done here.
Yeah. Pay me whatever.
Yeah.
But then I had the opportunity actually to move to Asia.
Oh, wow.
And I never lived out of the country, and they came to me and said, hey, we're opening a development center and we're going to make one-of-one prototypes for athletes and new technologies. How would you like to be a part of that? And I was like, oh, great. I thought it was going to be in like South Boston. You got to go from Stoughton to South Boston. It's a little commute. They're like, no, it's South Korea. And
like, ooh, that is quite the commute.
Yeah,
Like,
that's I can't go back and forth.
Yeah.
And but I'll tell you, man, of all the things I've done and all the celebrities I've worked with, the athletes and all the things we've done, one of the most rewarding things was my 3 years in South Korea. I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
But I got
move the whole family?
I was single at the time.
Oh, okay. This is early. Yep.
Early on, and no kids or anything. And I had the opportunity to actually like learn from some of the best people in the industry as it relates to the process, engineering, designing, blueprints. It was crazy. I mean, I can't believe how much I learned. It was like, at that point I was thinking, do I go to school and get my MBA at some point? And this was like your MBA for the industry.
Right. Okay.
And so I did that. And then I said, what I really want to do is I want to run the basketball division at Reebok. That's what I want to do. And I'd like to do that by the time I'm 30. That's similar to where you are now. That was my goal at 30. And then 2.5 years into my stint in Asia, they called me and said, hey, how would you like to come back and run basketball? They gave me the opportunity. So 6 months before my goal, I got the job in basketball.
Wow.
And then at that point, it switched when I got back. Yes, I was signing athletes, and yes, I was, traveling around the world with the players and making the shoes and all that, and heavily involved with Shaq and AI and all that stuff. But I did get my first real taste of like running a business, because I was no longer like making shoes. I was now like deciding what the shoes were going to be. I was deciding kind of the price points, the margins. I was getting into the business, and I really liked it. And so to answer your question about like kind of like my thought of where I wanted to go, at that point I got a taste for running the business in sports. Right. And I was like, okay, I like this. This is like, I like skin in the game. I like risk. I like learning the business. I like making decisions. And so then I was on a fast track from there. And so then basically I had basketball. We grew that. We grew the shit out of basketball back in the day. We had like AI. We launched, his business was a couple $100 million. Then we had, we launched this brand Above the Rim. We launched it with like Baron Davis, Kenyon Martin, all these guys. That started to grow. Right. And so then they gave me more. Then they gave me like cross-training cleated. So I was signing all the NFL guys.
Yeah.
And it just kind of continued to grow from there. And as I started to get more successful, and I had great teams around me. That's one of the things I've always been able to do, is I have a pretty good eye for talent. Right. And I'm like, yeah, you Kevin, you come with me.
Right.
So it's like sending yourself around great people that really balance what you do well was a key to this. But I kind of moved pretty fast. And then I started to eye like, I think I could eventually run this company one day, because I had enough experience in a lot of areas.
Right.
I was not afraid to take any opportunity, whether it was like engineer at the beginning, moving to Asia, taking on basketball when I didn't have a lot of product marketing experience. I did a lot of these things. And I think that gave me more and more confidence that one day I could maybe run the business. I didn't think it was going to take as many years as it took. A little longer marathon than I thought, but I stuck it out. So.
It's still amazing though. Like even when we started this conversation, I feel like you look at someone's resume and you'll see maybe a year, maybe 2 years at a previous company before jumping ship. Yeah. And obviously that's because there's just so much opportunity out there. Yeah. But to have as long as a run in the same building or under the same entity that you've had is like, I get goosebumps thinking about it. So,
I think one thing I always tell people, and I really do, I try to do this, is you have to like manage and really be aware of your own energy. You have to manage your career. And so even though it was, over 32 years now, when I felt like I wasn't giving a lot, or I felt like I wasn't contributing enough, I would go to who was running the company and say, listen, I want to be here, but I need to do something different.
Right. Okay,
I remember like my 6th season in a row of doing like basketball and cross training, where you're going into a room with a bunch of designers and you're critiquing the design, you're deciding what to go with in a design review. I was sitting there like burnt. I was giving no energy. I was adding no value to the process. And at that point, I went to the president of the company who had a good relationship at the time and said, listen, I love it here, I want to be here, but I need something different or else I'm going to have to figure it out. And Reebok was always very accommodating with me. And so he said, listen, we're about to have a job at head of sports marketing. So moving out of product and handling the athletes and signing the celebrities. Gotcha. So negotiating contracts. So I left that job and went into head of sports marketing for a period of time. It got me to learn how to do contracts. It got me, into the sports world, negotiating deals. Wow. And I got a break from the high pressure product every season. And then I eventually went back in. But I think 30 years is a long time. But if you're always managing your energy and always you never want to not be really, really, I think, at a high level and then get the tap on the shoulder from someone saying, yo, Kev, we got to talk.
Right.
And then you know what they want to talk to you about because your energy's at 7, it should be at 10. You don't want that.
Right.
You want to be tapping someone on the shoulder saying, yo, I love it here, but I need to give you something else to give you more of me. You want to proactively do that.
Right.
I think that's what I always tried to do. Advice. And that's why I ended up doing a lot before I took this role. There's outside of practicing law and being an accountant, there's very little that I didn't do at Reebok.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of respect within the building for me because the younger people know, okay, he did what I'm doing now, or he did what I want to do. And so, yeah.
And it probably was an easy decision for the higher ups at the time because you were asking for more, but also had the receipts to be like, oh, he does have the track record.
Yeah.
He took basketball from X to Y.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these things weren't really hard transitions, right? One day I'm running basketball, the next day they want me to go manage the athletes or sign the next player.
Right.
They knew I could navigate in that culture and came from that culture, so I think they had trusted me doing that. And then I would go into other roles like merchandising where I knew good products, so merchandising was not a far cry. So I did do a lot of things, but I think they had confidence in me doing them. The years running the business in the beginning were a different flow than dealing with the celebrities and athletes.
Right.
I launched the music business for Reebok. So I signed Jay and I signed 50 and I signed Pharrell, and those were years off my life that I'll never get back.
The ones negotiate? Were you the one negotiating?
Yeah, it was me. I was part of a team that was my odyssey my journey with the athletes was, it started in 96 or 95 when Allen Iverson was the first thing that happened, which kind of was my first role when I was in the mailroom, or my first situation was in 1992, I was working in the mailroom when we signed Shaq.
Wow.
And they had this massive tent on the old campus. And I was in the mailroom, had no right to be in the tent, but was
the tent more of it was pretty prestigious?
It was we have a wedding,
Oh, okay.
It was a wedding tent, they built it for Shaq.
Wow.
And they had this big announcement. They did sign Shaq, and he had gone to Nike, and he wore a Reebok jacket at Nike to tell them, I'm signing with Reebok. He flew back at his big thing.
Yep.
And I went up to him and I was like, hey man, I just want to let you know someday I'm going to work for you. And he was 19.
Right.
He was like, yeah, whatever. I didn't even acknowledge it. And now we work together. He was vice president, or he's president now of Reebok basketball. We work together every day. So it's kind of a very full circle moment.
Right.
And then another kind of brash moment for me was in 95 when Allen Iverson was a sophomore at Georgetown. Me and 2 friends of mine, we went off campus and we designed a shoe for this kid who was at Georgetown. And then there was a big meeting happening in the boardroom that Paul Fireman was happening. And my partner at the time, Q Gaskins, was like, hey man, there's going to be a meeting about Iverson. We got to go to the boardroom.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
I can't go to the boardroom. I've been to the boardroom once.
Yeah.
And I ain't going back there.
Today's not the day. Yeah.
And he goes, no, we're going in there. They're going to discuss Iverson and we need to be there. And so what was happening at the time was there was all of this momentum going against us signing Iverson because John Thompson, who was the coach at Georgetown, was on the board of directors at Nike. His agent, David Falk, was Michael Jordan's agent.
Right.
So there was all these factors against us. And so Paul Fireman had this famous moment where he said, listen, I love this kid, but there'll be another Allen Iverson.
Right.
And then me and my friend Q stood up and we said, no, there won't. We didn't plan it. We didn't rehearse it.
The boardroom?
This is in the boardroom. We're in the boardroom. And it's all the senior executives around the table.
Yep.
And this is already an intimidating boardroom. And I'm sitting as close as I could be to the window.
Right. And you're fairly junior.
I'm super junior,
time, right?
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not even working in the basketball business. I'm making tennis shoes, man. This is what I was doing. But I had a passion for basketball. And I knew this kid, Allen Iverson, was the guy. And so literally, Paul Fireman gets up in front of the group and he says, listen, the money's getting really high. You know, there's a lot of signs that this guy may not go with us. There'll be another Allen Iverson. And that's when we, you know, unsolicited, no one asked our opinion. We were like, no, there won't. Stood our hand down. And he goes, what? Tell me why. Because this is what he was always inquisitive.
Right.
And then we got up and we said, listen, man, on the court, this kid's 6 foot. Everyone wants to play with him. He's dunking in traffic. He's the quickest kid ever. He's one of the best athletes, high school All-American in football, basketball. Off the court, he's got the most swag you'd ever see. And it was a risk because he had some problems in his past. And there was a lot of people, look at him now, Hall of Famer, but back then, he was a 6 foot guard. People weren't really sure, right? And even Foot Locker was like, I don't know if he's going to make it. So it was a risk for us to really put our necks out. And then I don't know, must have been 6 months later, I was in David Falk's office meeting him. They sent me down to meet him, and I was showing him a prototype that we made in my friend's living room in Quincy, Mass.
Wow.
And then we were showing him a prototype, and it's Allen Iverson.
That's wild.
Yeah, and so I kind of early on, you know, had the ability to relate to the athletes.
Right.
And I have I'm fortunate to have great relationships now with a lot of the guys. But that was really the start of it, was kind of pulling Shaq aside when I was in the mailroom. And then we had this kind of audacious attitude towards Allen in 95, 96 and got him.
That's
and he's still with us today. And I think the craziest thing about the whole thing is now being CEO of the company, Shaq is president of our basketball operations. Allen Iverson is vice president. And those were the two first athletes that I really worked with back in the early 90s. So it's kind of
insane.
Come full circle.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably crazy.
Well, it's cool to hear you talk what little Todd liked was basketball, hip hop, and shoes.
Right.
And then to hear Todd Senior now, you know, all grown up.
Yeah.
Basically bringing these guys onto the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is insane.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
How much of that is you know, at a young age, how much is that? In my own head, I'm like, are you manifesting that? Is that I'm noticing in me at 29.
Yeah.
You know, who my level of celebrity in my own head is if Pond Scum, if A-listers are here and this is Pond Scum, I'm like, one.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to check off, you know, guests on the pod. I for a long time wanted Gary. We got Gary.
Yeah, right.
We got Grant.
Yeah.
We got Todd now, our guy Todd.
Yeah.
Were you, how much of that was thinking it, living it before it even happened? Are you a believer in that stuff? In heavy manifestation, obviously backing it up by massive action, of course, but
100%.
It's just so cool to hear your story of you bumping around as a little kid, you know, backwards hat, you know, dribbling a basketball with cool kicks on, to now, you know, bringing these massive, literally and figuratively, massive humans onto.
Yeah, I think
Reebok.
Once I got my legs under me, you know, once I got my first few years there and figured out how it worked, and how much passion I had for it. So I learned a little bit. I think then it was off to the races, because I think one thing I had that a lot of other people at my age didn't have, or even older people, is they didn't really, really love it.
Right.
It was almost like a lot of them could be marketing sports one day or Windows the next day or marketing cars the next day. This wasn't my game, man. I would basketball, you know, sports in general, music, pop culture, sneaker culture, fashion. This is my cornerstone of who I am. This is my fabric of who I am. And so for me, it was easy for me to really go 100 miles an hour. It was easy for me to kind of pass people, and it was easy for me to succeed just because I didn't really think about it too much.
Yeah.
But when I got my legs out under me and started to learn how this thing really worked, then I did start to manifest things more, and I did start to kind of think, okay, you know, this is where I am today. This is where I think we could go, or this is where I think the brand could go.
Right.
And I started to really think about it. And I think, you know, once Reebok got acquired a couple of years ago, because we were under Adidas for a while.
Right.
Once Reebok got acquired by a new group in ABG that's very much more entrepreneurial, I now have an opportunity to really think bigger and really do different things, because it's a very entrepreneurial environment versus Adidas, which was kind of, you know, a little bit constricted.
Right.
But I think part of manifesting is the risk taking. I don't think you can manifest where you want to go or visualize where you want to go without accepting that, you got to take risks to get there.
Totally.
And there's a lot of things that didn't work. There's a lot of things we did that were failures,
right.
you know, big and small. I had big failures. I had small failures. And then along the way, you learn from them. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true.
Right.
And then you kind of keep chalking up the wins that get course correct.
Yep.
And so along the way, I definitely feel like I learned a lot about the things that we didn't do well, the deals that didn't work.
Right.
And you learn, you know, I mean, like there's small ones and big ones. But when I first deals, we were doing, I was doing the whole sports and entertainment thing.
Yep.
I got a product. And we signed this actress who I'm not going to mention that.
Yeah.
But like, we never really met with her before the deal. She's big actress.
Yep.
Never met with her before the deal. And so we're talking to her through her people. And we were the night before at dinner, and she didn't come to the dinner. It was fine. And we said to the people, hey man, one thing, like when we do the PR tomorrow, like we're a fitness brand. Like we're into fitness, we're into the empowering people to move. We believe that, you know, fitness makes people better, blah,
right.
blah, blah. So, you know, this is the ethos of Reebok, just so she knows. First question, we're at like a Bloomingdale's or something, launching something. And the first question they ask her is about, you know, why Reebok? You know, they're a fitness company. And she goes, you know, I'm really not sure. She goes, the only exercise I do is running to the bodega to get cigarettes. And so my heart's in my stomach. My heart's in my stomach. And it's a failure for me.
Yeah.
Because the president of the company's looking at me like,
oh, because I see. Because
I was part of the team that chose her.
Gotcha.
I negotiated
first interview with her.
No. This is like I was involved in.
Gotcha.
I was involved in choosing her. I was involved in signing her, and you know, with a team, obviously.
Right.
But I was running the group, and it was not good. So, you know, what I learned from that is that any good deal, and I was just talking to a team the other day. You got to be able to spend time with the actual athlete or celebrity. You got to look across the table from them. Totally. You got to say, okay, Kevin, what are you trying to get out of this?
Right.
Here's what we're about. Are we finding common ground? And if they say, listen, man, all I want to do is my own shit.
Right.
I want you to design stuff for me. I don't want to do too much with Reebok. I don't want to do any press. You know, it's not a good deal because you're not failing me, and I'm not definitely failing what you want to do. And you never should ever feel desperate to do a deal, no matter how big the celebrity is sitting across from you. Because at the end of the day, consumers, especially today with social media, but even back in the day, are too savvy, man. They know a check when they see a check.
100%.
And then you're screwed because then you got brand reputation, integrity issues. The deal doesn't work. You still got to pay them.
Right.
And it's a shit show.
Right.
And so, you know, when you talk about kind of like the risk, the manifestation, a lot of these things are failing and learning, keeping the vision of where you want to go, you know, finding the next great celebrity that's going to help the brand. But definitely, like, you know, I've had a lot of those situations where, you know, you fail, you know.
I can only imagine being in those rooms with A-listers like that, and especially the back and forth 1,000 times via email with all their people.
Yeah.
You know, and you finally get close to the finish line.
Yeah.
And then someone says a statement like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, shit,
yeah.
This is just.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times, especially with like the younger group that I work with now, they're all super talented and connected. But like, you get to a point where it's almost like a relationship with a partner. It's like you get enamored with the thought of being with this person, even though you realize there's some not so great things in the first couple months of the relationship. You keep going, right?
Right.
But at the end, those things are probably going to manifest later in the relationship. Right. I think you get to a point sometimes where you're sitting across from your celebrity and you're envisioning them with us. You're envisioning how great this guy or girl will be for the brand, and you get drunk on the vision of what it is without really being a business person first.
Right.
And one of the things I think, and yes, I do have great relationships with athletes and celebrities today, but it never happened on day one, and it never happened because I tried to be their friend or hung out with them. It's business first. You know, and they respect that too, because you're going to make them more successful. And so I think sometimes you can get enamored with the personality, or just get enamored with the fact that, wow, this person is going to be great for our brand. Let's overlook some of these subtleties that I noticed in the first meeting. And it's like, no, that's not going to work. 100%. That's a recipe for destruction.
It's so funny you said, I had a buddy that just got out of a really bad relationship, struggling to move on, and we went out for drinks. And I was like, for me, I've had a fair share of breakups. Yeah. You know, now married, so it's like you're in a great spot. But I was like, tell me about her. Yeah. And he lists off 3 or 4 things that are phenomenal. Right. You know, all the pros. Right. And then I had to remind him of like all the you know the bad stuff she was doing behind the scenes. you know? And I was like, that girl you just talked about isn't even real.
Right.
That's not even
that's
real.
It's your.
I had to like shake him. I was like, it's not even.
That's your fantasy of what you want it to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh shit, yeah, I guess you're right. Like,
yeah.
And now he's, you know, but yeah, it's so spot on. It's easy to get enamored with the positives. In people, but
yeah, and that's one of the things when you're younger in business and you're around these celebrities and athletes, you got to keep it moving. You got to be like, you know, it's your job,
right?
And you got to realize at the end of the day, you're here to help grow the business.
Totally.
And if that person isn't going to help that, then it's a challenge.
How do you manage ego, especially at your level? You've been around so long. You've worked every job.
Yeah.
And internally, from the company standpoint, like I'm assuming you've had people come up through the ranks that maybe have a little problem with ego, and then I can only imagine on the sports and entertainment and celebrity side, as they, you know, kind of walk into HQ, thinking, you know, they don't stink at all.
Yeah.
Is there any protocols in-house that you guys are like, hey, that if they come in here with big ego, they're out, employee-wise or from a branding standpoint, you know, like a new collaboration that you think someone's gonna be great, and they come in, it's like,
you mean celebrity or employee?
Both fronts, like internally and externally with, you know, new collabs, and you're like, oh, this person's gonna be great, and then they walk in, and you're like, oof, they're not seeing eye to eye with us. And then two, for yourself, kind of a three-parter, how do you manage your own ego on a day-to-day? Is there anything you do to kind of you see it's crazy, like even just talking to you briefly at Strega, and now you're so like cool, calm, and collected. And for me, coming up through the ranks, I admire that a lot, because I'm, you know, I am constantly checking my own ego on a day-to-day basis, as we all have.
But I think it's what you said, like you come through the ranks. I think if you come up through the ranks and you come from the bottom up, like you appreciate where you are.
Right.
And I appreciate what everyone around me that works for me does, because I know those jobs. I know how hard things are. And we're not the industry leader. You know, I mean, come on, man. We're going up against giants like Nike and even Adidas, and it's a grind. And so I understand and respect the grind, and I'm even keeled because, you know, I just feel like I'm just somebody that landed in something they love and just works really hard at it. That's at the end of the day what it is. You know, there's no secret sauce. I'm fortunate enough to learn to make the right calls as I've gone on in my career. But I think I'm just like this because, you know, I have learned in life, and especially in life and business, and I know this is another cliche, but it's, for me, really works, is like, I don't let the highs get me too high and the lows get me too low. You know? I remember one time when we were on fire, man. We were selling Iverson's crazy. We had just launched 50 Cent's G Unit shoe.
Ooh, yep.
So this is like 2003. I don't know if you were even born yet.
Yep, 1995.
Okay.
So I was young.
Middle school. Okay. All right, cool.
We were listening to G Unit, the middle school dances at the time.
Yeah, sure.
Sunkiss.
There you go. Yeah. So we were rocking and rolling, right? And we had Jay-Z. It was just summer of 23. And we were at a Foot Locker meeting, and there was this guy who was the head of Foot Locker. I was younger, but I was managing the music and sports stuff, and he was a little older. And I was kind of thumping my chest a little bit, like, you know, he wanted a certain amount of pairs, because that was always the pull. You know, you don't want it. Supply and demand is a big thing in our industry, and we got to control the supply and the demand so that, like, you know, we don't oversell things, sale tags and all this stuff, you know. And the buyers always want more, and the Foot Lockers always want more, and we always want to manage the market. And so we were on fire, and I walk in there in New York, and he's like, you know, we want 30,000 pairs of G Unit. We can sell it all in a day. And I'm like, listen, this is how it's going to work. And I'm talking like I'm like mafia leader in some borough right now. You know? Yeah. I'm like, you know, this is how it's going to work. And he, in front of like 30 people, he says something like, listen, Todd, just because, and we, by the way, this was a run we were on. It wasn't like we were doing this for 5 years.
Okay.
This was like a year run we're on.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, brands like Nike have had this run for a really long time. So like, you know, it's like new money. Like, you know, you got new money, right?
Yeah.
And I'm feeling it myself. And he says, hey, just want to let you know, Todd. He says it in front of 30 people. He goes, you know, today's peacock is tomorrow's dust feather, is what he said to me. In front of like all the people that work for me. And I was like, And I just remember that moment. And it was kind of more like, what he was saying was, chill out.
Yeah.
Chill out.
Pump the brakes.
Pump the brakes a little bit. Like, you know, get yourself back in check. You've always been really even-keeled guy, but I think you're tasting success. And And I think that's something I really learned, and why I always have this kind of philosophy that, like, when things are great, they're never going to be great forever. When things are really bad, you got to get out of that kind of hole, but it's never going to be that bad forever. And that's very much a cliche. But as we were talking about earlier, man, like, everyone has their different mantra, their different philosophies, and their different things that make their heart and mind go. And for me, I've always tried to stay here. And I think I manifest that. I think about that all the time. In life as well, I have a lot of challenges in life, as we all do. Like, it's always like, you're never going to be as euphoric as you are right now.
Totally.
And it's never going to be as shitty as it is today.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that's kept me kind of even. But, as it relates to your question earlier about, like, arrogance and walking away, it doesn't take, once you've been in the business for a while, it doesn't take a long time to sit across from somebody and really see how they're wired.
Right.
Whether they're selling 10 million albums or they have one single on, Instagram or whatever.
Yep.
Like, you can tell right away, like, if they're going to be easy to work with. And so we definitely have been able to, or I feel over the years, been able to say, you know what, this one's a go or this one's not a go. Just not going to work for us. I think you always, in our industry, because it's a sports and culture industry, you always get people coming in that are like, think they have all the answers.
Yeah.
I played ball here and I have all the answers. And there's no real, like, code to how to figure it out. I mean, yes, certainly your manager can sit you down and say, slow it up a little, Kev. Like, there's a lot of people who know what they're doing.
Right.
My style was always to, like, let them self-destruct. So I was running the basketball business once when I was running it, and then I moved on to do something else. And a new guy came in from another brand, and he really thought he had all the answers. And we were already doing really well. And we had our first big sales meeting, and it was like probably 300 sales reps in a room. Right? And I wasn't presenting anymore. I was kind of like, I was handling athletes now. I wasn't in the mix as much. This is his first week on the job. And he'd already come in, and he's already telling everyone, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he says, all right, everybody, everyone who's sitting on the left, I want you to go to the right. And everyone who's sitting on the right, I want you to go to the left. And he was about to present his basketball strategy.
Yep.
Like changing what we were doing to his strategy. And he moves everybody. So everyone's moving. Everyone's like, why the fuck doing this? And he goes, you know why I did that? Because we're changing shit up. We're changing everything on day one. And I was like, yo, first of all, half the people in this audience, like, have been making a lot of money off the decisions that my team made, first of all.
Right.
Number two, we got a lot of momentum right now. And number three, the athletes that we have, the AIs and Barons, those are all our guys. And you're going to go to them and tell them you're changing everything. So I was like, you got to slow. And so I never said anything. Just kept chill, let him do his thing. I think he self-destructed in like 4 months.
Really?
Yeah, he was out in like 4 months.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think it's kind of like in situations like that, sometimes if you just let people like that kind of let him self-destruct versus altercation or
I like that.
But
that's great advice.
But I do feel like one of the magics of the business is to kind of really spend time with the celebrities, spend time with the representation, really try to get to know who they are, what they're about. Because I'll tell you the last thing I'll say about that is that an amazing top, whatever you want to call them, celebrity, like one of the top most famous 10 people in the world, if they're not really into the partnership, you should get someone who's not as famous, who has half the Instagram followers, who isn't making as many hits, but really wants to mess with you and really wants to be part of your brand. That's going to be a lot more impactful than chasing the star up here that really has no time for you.
Right, 100%.
So we're about to announce in 2 weeks a massive deal.
Ooh, here we go.
With somebody that I wish I could say right now, but she's big. And my team is really feels good about it. They really feel like, believes in the brand, is really methodical about how she approaches working with a brand. Yep. She's thought about it. And that's the stuff that you want to kind of hear. Incredible. So it should be a fun one.
That comes out in 2 weeks, you said?
We're announcing it in 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks.
Here we go.
Yeah, so it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. So that's exciting.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And where is Reebok going now? We've covered, your past, the come up.
Yeah.
When you look forward, what's on your radar for, where you want Reebok to be as we enter, the new year, new election. We're
a lot going on, a lot to navigate. Yeah. I think in order to know where we want to go, it is kind of, important to understand like what the brand was, because the brand, I've gone through a journey, but so has the brand.
Right.
You know, so the brand in the late 80s and in early 90s was a brand that was very risk-taking. We like to use this word of reverence, the word of reverence. That was very much, we took an irreverent approach to sport and culture. So, you know, the way we signed a Shaq, we signed an Iverson, we entered the music business with Jay-Z. We were the first brand to make aerobic shoes to really empower women to sweat in a gym. Like, we did all these things, right? And we did it with a very irreverent tone. So if you look at Nike and Adidas and Under Armour, I think they kind of have I mean, Nike does it the best, but they've got more of a very myopic approach to sport. Like, it's about excellence in sport. And I really value what they do and say. It's just not what Reebok is.
Right.
We've always been a little more like, let's take a risk on an AI. Let's take a risk on a Jay-Z sneaker.
Yep.
Like, we've always had that fabric. And we've always been in sport, and we've always been in kind of music and culture. We've always been able to kind of fuse the two in a really, I think, rich, organic way. And then when Adidas acquired us, it was kind of a dark time, because they quickly moved us into being more of a fitness brand. And so we got rid of a lot of the music things we were doing. They took all of our, you know, sports athletes around the world. And we ended up kind of being a one-dimensional fitness brand. And we lost a lot of the things that made people love Reebok, you know? And it wasn't until 2 years ago, when we got acquired by a new group in Authentic, that we now are kind of, what we say is, you know, getting our brand back to its rightful place. So when I took the role, the first thing I did is sat with my team and said, okay, let's build a strategy. Right. The strategy is going to be called Unleashed. It's about unleashing this great brand to a new generation of consumers. Yeah. And it's about kind of, you know, this irreverence. It's about looking at sport and culture different. I don't think the industry needs another brand that kind of says what the industry leaders say. Right. You know, you got to take risk on who you sign. And listen, like, you're going to have risks in the business that we do. We ran some running ads in the first part of the year, and you know, they were a little bit risky, you know, and so you're going to have wins and you're going to have losses. You're going to maybe piss some people off along the way, but I think that's always what Reebok's done. It's always kind of.
And is that what it's about?
Yeah,
even in life,
especially today,
causing some rifts.
Yeah. And I think other brands do it more than they used to. I don't want to sit here and say there's not creativity in all those brands, because there are, and I respect all those brands. I'm just saying, like, the kind of cornerstone of who we were was this irreverence. And I think that was, you know, if you look back in time, like with us, you know, breaking into the industry through women in aerobics, and then, you know, some of the crazy pump technology and the way we launched pump, and then, you know, the AI signing and Shaq and some of those things. And then I think the music thing, which obviously, as I said earlier, working with those guys was stressful, you know, and managing Jay and 50 and Pharrell at the same time. That's insane. The stories are crazy. But I think that was just a totally new dimension. Now, like, Travis Scott has a shoe, this guy has a shoe, that guy has a shoe. That shit didn't exist back when we did it.
At the time, you guys
2001, Jay was the first one to do it. And so I think, like, you know, we had an entrepreneur visionary in Paul who listened to us, and we said Jay was the guy, and he gave us the opportunity to go do that. And I think we created an entire new segment of the footwear industry. So I think all of that is what we're trying to do today. Right. The problem is, like, you know, it takes time. You know, the first thing is that once you set the strategy, the product creation takes time, right? So, like, if you want to bring a new product in the market and you start today, you know, with sneakers, you're like 12, 14 months out. Totally. So when I say, let's get back into basketball, that's what we want to do. I can't just, I could do an ad tomorrow. Right. I can do an ad, but then the players aren't wearing anything. Right. The kid can't go to Foot Locker and buy it. So what we're really doing is getting back to this irreverence. We are broadening and getting back into sport. So we have a very big classics business, like the shoe you're wearing today. Like, we have a huge classics business, and that's always been a great heritage. But we want to get back into sports. So we're getting back into running, which is a hot category. We just launched new innovation there. We're going to be back in basketball. Obviously, we have Angel Reese, who's playing amazing this summer, and then we'll be signing NBA players that Shaq and AI are working on. And then from there, we're getting into other sports again. So we're into golf, tennis, and from there, global football and other sports. So it's exciting. So we're going to get back into sport. We've got new innovations, and we're going to do it with this really disruptive, irreverent tone that we hope is kind of, you know, relevant to a young consumer that doesn't really know us that well right now, because we were targeting a little bit of an older consumer. If you weren't like 30 years old doing CrossFit, you may not have really known us for a period of time.
Totally.
And so now we've got a chance to widen kind of who we are again and talk to like a lot of consumers. Right. So it's
good. I love a brand like you guys that are constantly innovating. You know, we're in talks with getting him on the pod now. Former CEO of Blockbuster, who was there when Netflix came to Blockbuster.
Crazy.
You know,
the whole story is crazy.
Yeah, and you know that whole story, and it's like, you know, even we work really closely with Celsius now, and even see them pivot from the fitness space into more lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking to them, and I was like, brands, you know, outside looking in, it seems like, and even with our own brand, it seems like to pivot, it's almost like moving a cruise ship, where if we want to turn, it's going to be only a few degrees, and then over time, now we've changed courses completely.
I think the marketplace today, first of all, the marketplace in general, I've never seen consumers so open to new brands, and to startup brands. Totally. Like if you look at like the kind of beverage market, the kind of sport drink market, it's insane. Alcohol market. The one market, or not the one, but one of the markets where I was slow to do it is ours, where like Nike was so dominant and is still dominant for so long. Like if you had told me 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 2 new running brands are going to come in and they're going to take so much market share to Nike, you're not going to believe it. In Hoka and On, like you'd be like, this will never happen. First of all, getting into footwear is really hard. It's a high cost entry business, and it takes a long time to do it. But they have, and other brands too are coming up. You know, a lot of people are taking share. New Balance is taking more share. Asics, you know, we're getting some share now with kind of the change going on. And I think it's just that like this consumer today is so much more open to, you know, just not just defaulting to a Nike or not defaulting to a Timberland boot like they used to. Like it's just, you know, they're open. And so I think it's now the brands have the opportunity to reimagine themselves like us, or introduce themselves like a Hoka. And it's just an amazing time to be in the industry, because for so long, it was kind of like the wholesaler would say, okay, I've got this much money for Nike, and then I got this much money for all the other guys, so you guys can fight it out.
Right.
And I'm not saying that Nike is an amazing brand. I'm just saying that the times are changing a little bit, and I think consumers are more open to other things. And so now there's a chance to go get more and get more and get more. And so it's a good time for us to be repositioning the brand. It's a good time for us to be screaming about, you know, what the brand can do. I just am trying to bring in bring in people that like are comfortable with risk, and are comfortable trying to take a change, because that's a big thing. You know, I think it's hard to find people that really will. And I have to create the environment where you can fail. Right. Because if I don't create the environment where you can fail, then it's, you know.
That's like I heard at Amazon, if a manager says no, they have to type a 2-page thesis of why it's no.
Because no's just the easy default, right? Let's just keep doing what we're doing. It's kind of working. Right. You know?
It's like default yes. Yeah. Which totally switches the game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think part of the environment needs to be that, you know, you pick up and you keep going, right? You know, it was when back in the day we had this glow in the dark shoe. The bottom would glow in the dark.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it got delivered into our building, and the chairman saw it, and he was like, and Foot Locker was coming in that day, so he's like, we're going to present this to Foot Locker. It's going to be the biggest thing ever, right? And so I was young at the time. We get the shoe. He has all these interns board up the window so the whole room is dark, turns off. Yeah. He was the best salesman ever. Dark, everything goes dark. Yeah. Has the shoe in his back, brings it out. All you can see is this lit up bottom. Shit looks crazy. And I'm like, and everyone's like, and then turn the lights back on. Well, what do you guys think? And the buyers say, yeah, we saw that from another brand a couple weeks ago. Oh, wow. And I was like, okay, holy shit. The chairman's gonna lose his mind. He's gonna fire everybody. Right. But you know what he did? He's all right, on the next one. On to the next one. And what he did right there is he created an environment. Now, he probably went to the one person and said, you should be up on your game more and know that somebody else has this. I'm sure he did that. But to the general population of employees in the room, he set the tone to say it's okay to fail. Right. We're not going to hit it out of the park every time.
Totally.
And, you know, but he didn't get frazzled. And I think people saw that. They were like, okay, we can
keep coming up with ideas.
Keep coming with ideas. You know, when I was, one other funny one, when Iverson was 2001, I think, the All-Star game was in Golden State. And so we decided that we were going to take his Rookie of the Year question shoe, and we were going to, every year he made the All-Star game, which was every year.
Right.
We would make the shoe in the colors of the hometown team. So when the game was in Golden State, the shoe was yellow and blue. And I went to him, and we've been working together for a little while, but not too long. And I was like, hey man, you like the shoe? It's yellow and blue. Would you wear it? He's like, yeah man, I'll wear it. But he wasn't really paying attention to me at the time. And I showed it to him one more time. He was like, cool. And then the day of the game, I go in the locker room. He's not wearing it. And I'm like, yo, you got to wear this shoe. There's like 50,000 pairs in the stores. Everyone's going to go buy it tomorrow. And he's like, I don't know, man. It doesn't match my uniform. He's like, a bunch of guys are clowning me. This is back in the day where you couldn't wear any color. Like, guys wear anything in the league they want now.
Yeah,
guys wear pink with magenta.
Anything goes.
Yeah, white uniform. Like back then, it was like, it didn't work like that. And so I'm desperate, man. So I run down out of the locker room and I go to his mom, who I was close with. And I was like, Ann, you got to go get your son to wear this shoe. Like, I've been with you for 4 years now, please. So she goes in the locker room, and I'm like, I have an ulcer at this point. All the Reebok executives, the C-suite, they're all at the game.
Oh, God.
And they're all waiting for Nicole wearing it. And this is one guy, me, who said, this is going to be great.
Right.
And she comes out, and she goes, he ain't wearing it. And my heart just sunk in my stomach. And I thought I was going to get fired.
Right.
I thought I was going to get fired. And there was cancels. And, the shoe didn't sell because no one's going to buy a yellow shoe if the kid doesn't wear it. Get back to Boston. And sure enough, Paul and the chief guy at the time are like, listen, you took a swing. What'd you learn from it? And I said, I got to work closer with him. I got to really make sure. I got to be around the weekend. I learned a lot from him. And they go, all right, cool. That was it. I really thought I was getting fired.
Right.
Because there was money involved in that.
Totally, yeah.
But I think this is an environment that you create where you kind of try to instill this idea that, risk-taking is good and failing is okay as long as you pick up and move. So that's part of the culture that trying to create now, but it's not easy.
That's incredible.
But I think your story about Amazon is right. Like a lot of companies, like it's just you get complacent, you have some success. And I think when you're having success is when you really got to start thinking about pivoting.
Totally.
That's the pit. When you're at this point right here, okay, we cannot sit. We got what's next?
Right.
Where do we go? Where can we pivot? And I think too many brands kind of sit on the success.
Right. And owning those failures is tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But probably I'm a big Jocko guy.
Yeah.
And hearing his, I got to, we were working with Slate at the time.
Yeah.
And they sat us right next to that whole,
that crew,
that whole crew. And oddly enough, he was right in front of me and we got to jam. And
that was cool.
And he tells that awesome story about they had a blue on blue, in Iraq.
Yeah.
One of his own guys shot his own guy. And he goes back and is like, well, I'm done. He was like this big commander at the time of this big Delta force, and they completely owned it. He was like, oh, it's my bad. I didn't do X, Y, and Z. And it saved his ass,
Yeah.
They were like, okay, whereas it'd be interesting if you came back from that event and you're like, oh, he's, it's on him. He totally fucked us all up for us. And
exactly.
I wonder if they've been like, I think, like Jock is always like extreme ownership.
Yeah.
And you displaying that, I think, is
exactly.
is beautiful.
Just got to take ownership for it and learn from it. Be clear. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Absolutely, man.
It was awesome to meet you at Strega. I was so glad we got to do this.
Yeah, for sure.
And oddly enough, we're in the middle of a rebrand. That's why I was asking, kind of how you guys see rebrands, and we're rebranding the show to my wife and I, married, obviously. We have baby number 1 on the way.
Oh, congrats, man.
Thank you. So
When's
we're rebranding. You have the first official hat of the Cookie Show.
I love it.
So it's be a more still very business.
I love it.
Family. So
life. You're changing this to that. I think that this is obviously brings more personality to it. And
this was a great. It was like for us, we've been doing the pod for about a year now.
Yeah,
maybe a year and some change. No Limits is great to get us off the ground.
Yeah,
and then I think you're right. We were like missing that personalized touch.
Yeah,
the folks that listen are they consume Ashley and I's content on a regular basis.
Yeah, so they know you. They know you guys.
And No Limits is like, well, what I was like, what is, even looking at it now, when I made that, I was like, oh, I made this on Canva, with the lights and the bricks. I was like, oh, No Limits.
Right.
And then we we weren't even in this studio. We were back at Big Night's headquarters in Seaport. and we had Hurley with us in this little storage closet they made with the green screen and stuff, and on the screens, like, this is so sick. And now you see it, and I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, it needs this. So this is like the 2.0.
I think I mean, with all the podcasts and all the social media, it could get lost.
Totally.
And then this is like, ownership,
Right.
Yeah. People are going to remember it, especially if you've got that kind of following. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're pivoting to the Cooney show because it'll be more of her on here as well. More call-in relationship advice. And then for me, like, I had to like scratch this itch of entrepreneurial folks like yourself.
Yeah.
So we'll have kind of a meshing of both.
Yeah.
So still like very true to No Limits. Like literally we'll have, guys like yourself on, Grant, and then we had our priest on, Father Michael, from the North End came over. So it's like anything goes.
Yeah.
But figured we just needed like something. People feel so attached for whatever reason already.
Yeah.
I was like, how do we spin this, into I guess into that entanglement of the brand.
But like what? So 3 years from now, if it's hot and it's like the thing, because like I guess like what is it known? What is it known for? Is it known because people say, I just love listening to them talk about life, or is it because you're getting? Is it because of people you have on?
Yeah.
Or like, what do you think is going to be if it works? What's the secret sauce?
Totally. I think from I'm big in. I'll read every DM. I try to answer every comment on each post, just because to your point from earlier, like the consumers has honestly come up with some of our best content. Oh, you should go to Target and do X, Y, and Z.
Oh, they tell you,
and we'll do that. And then we're really close partners with Target.
Yeah.
And a guy shoots me a DM and he's like, you should have your wife in Target and say that we share our locations on our phones. And he's like, you should say you caught her. She must have forgot that we follow each other on Find My Friends and you caught her shopping. It was during Lent. So it was like she gave up shopping for Lent.
Yeah.
Turns out we did the video. It got in People magazine and then it got Target's attention. That's enough crazy. So that we now are partnered with Target long term. So I'm constantly reading what the consumer is saying about this show in particular. And they get us now in snack size bites, 45-second clips on the internet. So it's like these really like OG diehards that love us in short form and just want to, a lot of the people listening will be, commuting to work, obviously. They're walking the dog, they're working out, and they just want to hear myself and Ashley, or a guest on what's going on in their world. Yeah. There's some sort of, you know what it is? It's like, my wife and I were talking about this earlier this morning. It's like the show Friends. Yeah. For some people it's The Office or Friends or Seinfeld. Yeah. You turn it on and you just feel like home. Yeah. It's like, funny. Or just it's
like comforting. The journey. You can follow along.
Right.
And it becomes for people like part of the routine.
Right, exactly.
Like, I want to hear what's going on with them today. It's part of what they do.
Right.
Yeah. On a different level, my wife and I have a crazy life. She's running around crazy entrepreneur. She's like 11 years younger. I'm doing my thing. I got 2 older kids. Yep. And then I got 2 twins. So what happened was anyway, the point of what I'm saying is like friends come and hang with us or stay with a house in the Cape. Friends come stay with us in the Cape. And they're like, you two are fucking a show. Like they just sit and watch because there's so much. First of all, we're kind of funny with each other, but there's so much fucking going on all the time that people are like, when I go home on Sunday, I need a fucking nap after hanging out with you guys. But I have 2 older kids, and then when we got married, she never had children, and she was like, listen, I want to have a child. Yep. And I had a lot of complexity in my life before. I was like, listen, I'm good. Like, she's like, well, that's the ultimatum. So she I also couldn't commit. I was going through this other stuff and I couldn't commit. And so she left to move to LA. She left me. So I wrote her a letter every day for 70 days in a row. Wow. I wrote her a letter, handwritten letter every day, 70 days in a row. On the 70th day I went out and I was working with Jay-Z at the time. Oh, wow. And it was, I think, the Suit and Tie tour. So I went to Jay and I went to his manager. I said, hey, I'm taking my ex and her girlfriends to the concert tonight. And I never asked for shit.
Yep.
I was like, I need the whole fucking thing.
Yep.
I mean, short of putting him in the stage to do a verse with you.
Right. I need it all.
Everything. And he did. He did.
Wow.
We were in the pit with Beyonce. We were bad, the whole thing.
Oh my God.
And her friends were just on cloud nine.
Yeah.
She was kind of like, I know what you do.
Was she giving you the side eye like, I know this is all.
She was kind of like, listen, like, if you aren't ready to commit and we're not going to get married, I don't give a fuck. Like, I like him. I like Jay, but I've seen him with you before.
Right.
Like, if you think this is going to, like, my girl's okay, but and so, make a long story short, like, we ended up, she moved closer. She moved to New York. We started a date, and then when we finally got married, we agreed to have one, and then we had twins.
Wow!
I almost passed out. I was in a meeting in my office, and I almost passed out against the glass door. But listen, I wouldn't change anything. So they're almost 6 years old. They're amazing, twin boys, and my older kids are amazing. My son just graduated from Tufts. My daughter's in Miami. So it's all good, but you guys obviously have an interesting dynamic. We kind of have a funny dynamic too.
See, I think it's you hear everyone say it, but you guys need your own show. You do podcasts,
exactly.
Because we're the same. We are. Anytime I go home, she's always like, "What's the new?" Like, we just closed on our first multi. It's a 5-plex up in Pembroke, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
All while trying to do the Sweat House stuff. And balance social.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Oh, we're also now pregnant."
Yeah.
She's due February 8th.
Wow.
So we're like,
that's what I was gonna say to you. The only advice I would give you is like, to definitely, and I've been like, find your center of gravity.
Right.
Like investments are great. Hopefully you have people that can help you with that. Because if you're caught up there doing the building and the maintenance on the house in Pembroke, and you're spending 20 hours or 30 hours a week on the Miami house stuff or whatever, like, you can quickly lose focus on this.
Totally.
And I think like feels like what's going to make you guys go is this. But I think like I don't do podcasts. I'm on them, but I don't do them. I feel like the ones that are great are ones that really spend the time to prepare and really know what they want to talk about. Right. I'm not saying you guys would script your own deal, but I'm just saying, like, if you're working 40 hours a week on the other shit, and then slowly this becomes a nice to have, it won't be as good.
That's a great point.
And I think this is probably what's going to make, like, when you call the girl from Webster Bank, she's answering because of this.
Exactly right.
Right? You're not because you own some property in fucking New Hampshire.
No.
So I think it's like, I'll tell you one, I was, this is an interesting story that's kind of relevant to this.
Yeah.
I was in Italy with 50 Cent on tour. I traveled with him for 3 weeks through Europe, right? I'm not exaggerating when I say this. Every city. We were in Stockholm, Zurich, all through the UK. This is at his height. So when you were in 7th grade. And after every concert, he would go back to the room and he would get room service. And his boys would go out to the club and they would make the money in the after party. They would get a bag to go to the after party, right? He never did it. And I said to him one night when I was back with him, I said, yo, why don't you ever do that shit? And he goes, and by the way, he would work out with the security guys the next morning, every fucking morning at 8 o'clock. I'm telling you, the guy's a fucking machine. And I've been around a lot of heavy, like, artists and celebrities and athletes, and he's one of the work ethic is beyond. That's why I think, is so successful. And he said, because nobody cares about Curtis Jackson. They care about the consistency of my product. So he told me. And he said, if I start looking flabby and shit, or if my lyrics aren't good, or if I have 3 bad shows in a row. And the reason why this was also relevant is because he had G-Unit sneakers, he had G-Unit underwear, he had like G-Unit cologne.
Was this around the vitamin water?
This is vitamin water. This is vitamin water. He had a Marc Ecko deal for like underwear, and he had like so many deals. But he said, like, he keeps all of those things around him, like, working, but does what he needs to do, but he keeps. Wow. So when we had a meeting on like sneakers and culture, like, he was in, he was spreadsheet. Let's see what we're doing. But like, in general, like, he was all about the fact that I'm building this 50 Cent thing. Right. And that's why people want to come see me. That's why they're buying my shit. That's why they're going to endorse me. And as soon as that starts to kind of go away a little bit, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to have that. So the consistency of my product of 50 Cent.
Great point.
And I just think, listening to you, I think, like, it's great that you can parlay your your celebrity and parlay like all that you guys are doing into all these things. But shit, man, like 29 investment property, this franchise, a baby, and you guys are just starting this new thing kind of and trying to figure out how you guys flow. I know you guys have a great relationship, but how you guys flow on a week-to-week basis.
Yep.
I think that takes work to figure that out.
100%. You're spot on.
And my advice is like,
I like
stay
that.
in the business of you.
Right. And I love that you said that, and I take that to heart because it's like, you get in these, you've experienced on a way higher level, but you get in these different rooms with bigger people, and then new opportunities come out. And I'm 29, early-ish in my career still. There's a part of me that's always fearful to say no to the opportunity. Right. Because I'm like, oh my God, like who knows what you walk through this door and what does that? Yeah. Who do you meet next? And
of course,
does that
you don't want to. Yeah.
But you're right. You can get like, I mean, that's why for this fiveplex, I was like property manager. Right. I didn't want to see it. Right. Right. You let me know what's happening. You just do it. Yeah. Sweat house is kind of a different beast. We're like, the next step is hiring an area manager to really run day-to-day operations. That way I can more or less just be the kind of the capital up front to get it going, and then because you're right, it's like you kind of lose your center of gravity, and
I think you lose what makes you special, and lose what makes it. You lose. You could. I'm not saying it's happened, dramatic. You could lose why people want to be in business with you,
right?
Because this is your core, and that's like what you don't want to all of a sudden be like, holy shit, like the work I'm putting out. The podcast isn't the quality it was, or we're not really on because we're not talking about it enough. And And I do think once you start mailing in your core craft, everything else starts to go away.
Right.
So I know like shit, we should go to LA for 3 days because Sprite invited us to the Super Bowl.
Right.
That sounds really good. But if like you got a show on Monday and it's got to be a good show, maybe you should stay for the weekend.
Totally. Totally. Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Did you find while you're building your career and you started to have kids?
Yeah.
I've heard different stuff. I've heard guys say when they have kids, it reintroduces it brings out this new motivation. Yeah, that they're like, okay, now I'm not working selfishly for me and my interests. It's for the best interests of the family now.
Yeah.
Was there any of that? Like, did you defer to the wife or maybe a nan? Like, how is there any sort of structure of?
I mean, I personally had a crazy. My ex was an addict, so I had my kids. So I had my kids, full custody of my kids since they were like 5 and 7.
Wow.
So I was balancing a career, all those things we talked about earlier. Right. At the same time, I had the kids full time.
Wow.
So my mom was helping me a little bit, but she was a school teacher. She was still working at the time, and so I had to constantly have, help. They were in school during the day, but after balancing babysitters and all that stuff. So it was always but I was I'm very hands-on father. Like I'm very close with all my kids, very, very close. And I think for me, 2 things. Number one, I think you do get a different perspective on life. You start realizing that, there's people that you're responsible for and that are looking up to you. So you have to set the tone. You have to be, I think, obviously setting a good example. But I also think like I worked really hard, and I look back and I could have spent more time with them sometimes.
Right.
So, but like you can second guess everything, right? Totally. It's like when we first came in here, we were talking about vacation. Like I work a lot, right? And then when I'm on vacation, I work, and this is just my DNA. Like everyone knows this about me, and so I think I balance. You figure out a way to balance everything, but I never look back and really regret it because I think that like I've been able to provide my kids with a great life. Not just I don't mean financially and stuff. Just like I'll tell you one other funny. This is a crazy 2-second story. I was going through all the crazy shit back in the day, right? And with my ex and with Darcy and all this stuff, my wife. And I don't know how this happened, but I don't know how much you believe in stuff that happens.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I was working at Adidas, and there was this guy who was running Adidas. I was working for Reebok, but we were owned by Adidas. And I don't know how this happens, but he chose me and 4 other people to go see this very famous psychologist.
Oh, wow.
It was a 3-day session. The guy was a German professor from Carnegie Mellon, but he changed this guy's life And he was the big heavyweight at Adidas, this old CEO. And so he basically went and said, I want to share this guy with other people. I didn't even fucking know this guy who chose me.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm going through all this fucked up shit. Okay, I'll go. So you go in, the wife takes the phones. Oh, you're having breakfast, and then she says, okay, the doctor's ready to start now. And you go in with these people you don't even know. And I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing. But anyway, his entire philosophy on life is very counterintuitive. But it's that you make every decision in your life for yourself. Every decision.
Right.
So your mom's sick in New Hampshire. She wants to move in with you guys. But your wife's like, Kev, like, I love your mom, but she ain't moving in. You know, what do you want? What do you want? If if you want your mom to move in, you say, this is my way, the highway, because it made me happy. And that's a little bit more extreme example. But, you don't stay married for the kids, you pursue everything in life to make yourself happy. And the whole theory is that if you're truly happy, like if you're really happy, then you'll be the best spouse, you'll be the best dad, you'll be the best podcaster. It's just and so I, at that time, was deciding whether or not I was going to get remarried and whether or not I was going to commit to her. My kids didn't want it. They were teenagers. You know, teenagers are like, we ain't doing this shit. She's 10 years younger. We don't want her in the house. I made that decision. And life isn't perfect today with a blended family, but I'll tell you, we're happy.
Right.
Relative to where we we're all happy. And I think like I made that decision. And he talks just about like your aura and what you put out there. And I see you're a very positive person, but it's the way you treat people. I learned a lot.
Right.
Like he told the story that he was going to, this is a 2-second story. He was going to Milan, and he was going to this famous museum that his wife wanted to go to. They're on vacation. And they got there at 5:01. It closed at 5. And there was this Italian woman at the door, and she was not having it. She was like on her feet all day. And he's like, could we just come in? We're from America. We're leaving Milan tomorrow. Could you just let us in? My wife's been wanting to see this museum for fucking 2 weeks, blah, blah. And she's like, no. It's like, it's closed. And he started to empathize with her about, I used to work on my feet all day. I know what this is like. You got to go home. You got this. And after 2 minutes, they got in.
Wow. Yeah.
So about like 2 months later, I come back, okay? And I'm going to, and I'm not, I think I'm a pretty friendly person, but I'm not overly, I think I've changed. I try to be super positive when I can. But so I'm at Logan Airport, and I'm going to London, and I'm flying on Virgin, and I got my carry-on.
Yep.
And this dude comes up to me, the Virgin guy, and he says, hey man, you can't take that on. And I'm like, yo, I've been traveling this bag overseas. It's a small bag. It's got like, for like, 5 years or whatever. And he's like, I'm just telling you. So I get an argument with him, and he was at the gate, the ticket counter. And the old Terminal E over at Logan, you go all the way down, and you can go all the way around. You can go in. So I basically snuck into security.
Right.
Snuck into security. So I sneak in, I go in, and I go into the gate area and into the lounge. I'm sitting there thinking about the speech the guy gave me about, like, maybe that guy's having a bad day. Right. Maybe he really thought the bag was too big. He didn't just single me out to be a dick. Right. So I go back out. I go back out at fucking security, International Terminal. I go, yo, man, I just want to let you know, like, I shouldn't have done that. You're doing your job.
Right.
If the bag's too fucking big, I'll check the bag. And he goes, wait, you just came back out? And I said, yeah, I just came back out. And he goes, just go ahead. So I sit back down in the terminal, and I think I was flying like business or something. And we're boarding, and he's doing he's the joint doing the. Yeah. And I get my name called, and he goes, hey man, and he gives me first class on Virgin.
Wow.
Like upgrades me to 1 seat, the best seat in the house.
Yep.
And I get on the plane, and I just think to myself, like, these are the things like...
You must have been vibrating at that point, huh?
More, not for the seat, but more like...
Yeah, just the whole...
A lot of what this guy said, like, making decisions for yourself, making yourself truly happy, putting an aura out there of energy. Like, as I get older, I really do believe in a lot of that shit.
Totally. Divine intervention or whatever they classify that as.
It's like whatever, what you put out, you get back. I do believe that.
Right.
And I do... This thing, you think about it, this thing about like your happiness. Like if you do sacrifice your happiness and you're always the type of person that's always giving in to make the other person happy, it does like break at some point, and you're not happy.
Suck you, yeah,
I
totally.
mean, maybe one time you give in if you want to move to the suburbs and your wife wants to stay here after the baby. Okay, I'll stay in Boston for a few years. Obviously, this is give and take.
Right.
But in general, 9 times out of 10, you got to make sure you're making decisions that make you happy.
Right.
You know, it was very interesting.
I love that.
Yeah.
I kid you not, we've done almost 100 episodes of the podcast. That, staying true to yourself and fighting for your own happiness. And then also what you said earlier about you own all these different ventures and keep your center of gravity.
Yeah.
I take that so to heart. It's something I'll replay on this episode once we air it over and over.
Yeah. Remember the 50 Cent story?
Yes.
Because he was on top of the world and he was saying that.
Right.
He was on top of the world and he was saying that. Like wasn't partying. I mean, I was like really impressed. And it all came down to the fact that he was like, nobody cares about Curtis Jackson.
Right.
They care about this guy, 50 Cent, that I am now. And it's about the music. And he just kept saying the consistency, you know?
Oh, I love that.
And that's like, it's almost like what we were talking earlier. Like, why do people, I think people like yourself, that when you get this following, you become part of their lives. And they expect to hear from you. They expect to hear about the developments. And and if you got too much going on and you're leaving the audience too much, or you're not giving quality to the audience, I think over time that won't help you.
Right.
You know? But
100%.
But I'm not a podcaster, so I don't
know. I don't say that lightly. Like, we've done 100 with really interesting, cool people, and that is some of the best advice I've ever received. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know you're a super busy guy.
Yeah, all good. It's great. It was fun.
And I can't thank you enough for it.
And I got a hat.
You got a hat. Hello. The first to dish.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm in the game.
My man. Thank you so much, dude.